And we are rolling at UCLA on November 12th, where it's a beautiful day in Los Angeles. It's sunny. And we're about to hear a debate on abortion. Specifically, this House believes that pro-choice is more important than pro-life. I repeat, that pro-choice is more important than pro-life. For the affirmative, Saya. On the negative, Austin. The chair calls this House to order and recognizes the leader of the government for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length.
Hi, my name is Saya.
Hi, Saya.
This House believes that pro-choice is more important than pro-life. This proposition is to be presented as the policy case in the affirmative. The criteria for assessing truth will be a preponderance of evidence and the quality of evidence in favor of the position. What is the problem? The United States has historically passed legislations and bills to infringe upon the rights of women who wish to terminate their pregnancies. According to Planned Parenthood, 3 out of 10 women in the U.S. will have had at least one abortion by the time they are 45 years old. Some will have had more than one. The U.S. Supreme Court decision Roe v. Wade provided the legal framework and precedent on women's rights to abortion and created a constitutional right for this. Various legislations in various states within the U.S. have consistently infringed upon women's constitutional rights to abortion. According to an article published by Angela Breslin, December 1st of 2014, in the Golden Gate University Law Review in 2012, Arizona legislature enacted a statute that, if passed, would have deprived any physician who performs elective abortions or any facility where elective abortions are performed from receiving Medicaid funding for any of their services, including family planning and preventative health care. The article also states that a number of other issues infringe upon women's reproductive rights, including but not limited to having passed legislations that attempted to deny elective abortions to any woman who did not obtain written consent from their husband, upholding 24-hour waiting periods would ultimately have forced women to travel long distances, take off multiple days from their daily schedules, and provided outrageous out-of-pocket funds. The article Rosenberg published in 2015 also states that running from 2010 to 2014, 29 states have enacted laws restricting access to abortion. These range from requiring a woman to undergo an ultrasound before having an abortion to requiring the doctors who perform abortions have admitting privileges at local hospitals to prohibit abortion after a certain number of weeks of pregnancy. Studies from the 2015 article published in The Nation state that in 2006, a South Carolina legislature enacted a law banning all abortions except those undertaken to protect a woman's life. Another extremely important aspect of abortion and the repercussions of outlawing it is the obvious issue that not all abortions are equal. There can be many various reasons a woman may choose to get an abortion, including poverty and abusive domestic household, alcoholism or drug problems that they may not be able to discontinue using during pregnancy, inability to provide the child with overall healthy and normal lifestyle, having been raped, cases of incest, trauma. The list is endless. How is the state going to intervene with some of the most intricate and complicated private issues within the lives of individuals who wish to make a choice about their own body? An article posted in the U.S. Catholic in September 2015 stated that from 1995 to 2013, 80% of all rapes and sexual assaults against female college students from ages 18 to 24 went unreported. According to an article posted in the American Journal of Family Law in 2015, there have been many cases in the news involving men convicted of rape who filed suit seeking visitations of the child who is a product of that rape. Keep in mind that this may include the rape of a father and a daughter, a brother and his sister, an older man and a minor of 14 or 15 years of age. Furthermore, the article also states that teen mothers that does not have the legal right to choose to have her baby adopted without notification is given to the biological father, who in some states actually has the right to object or block the adoption. The article posted in 2015 in the American Journal of Family Law also touches on the aspect that teenagers who keep and raise their babies face a bleak financial future. They often rely on public assistance in order to feed and shelter themselves and their children. This comes at a huge financial cost to this country. In the article published in 2015 in USA Today regarding rape, the article discusses the rape of inmates and recounts that the Commission has put nearly 200,000 victims of rape annually. Although a portion of these rapes may be men, we cannot ignore the fact that some of these are women, and some have ultimately led to the pregnancy of the female inmate by the male guard. What would be the possible solution there? Yes, we can provide alternate solutions.
Three.
Women who step forward about the rapes and pregnancies, and most likely it will come down to those who are actually found in the court of law to be raped based on substantial evidence, will be provided the opportunity to have abortion. But there will always be outliers. What about the women who choose not to step forward about the rape for wanting to protect their privacy, the privacy of their family, their husband, or their children? What about those who cannot provide the evidence that is needed to convict the rapist and ultimately allow for the abortion? What solution will those women be provided? In an article published in The Nation in 2013, the author states that the current population survey data showed that 15% of Americans, which account for roughly 46.5 million people, live below the poverty line. Why increase this number? Another article posted in The Future of Our Children in 2015, the author states that the greatest threat to U.S. children's health is to the U.S. children is their health. The rate of unintentional injury among children under the age of 1 was 23.1%. Adolescent mortality rates are 86 per 100,000 for black teenagers. The author also states that low-income children of racial and ethnic minority groups continue to die in infancy at rates higher than those experienced by white and higher income children. The article also states that children living in households headed by single mothers are twice as likely as their peers to miss 11 more days of school. And the article posted in 2014 also states that children admitted to 38 hospitals between the years of 2000 and 2009 showed that rates of admission for physical abuse and high-risk traumatic brain injuries were significantly related to increases in local mortgage foreclosures. So why do we have this problem? States within the U.S. have consistently shown to impose their laws and conflict within federal laws in the majority view on this vote. Their imposition of these laws are affecting young women and young girls throughout our nation and must be stopped. According to an article published in The Nation on September 21st of 2015, independent health clinics all over the country are closing due to laws that attempt to protect patient safety. The article states that ostracism, death, bomb threats, and arson are driving providers out of the field and discoursing new ones from entering it. Restrictions intended upon to shame women and raise of abortion. Media and politics have also played a very important role in the attempts to outlaw or decrease the rate of abortion, or at the very least the accessibility of it. In 2012 presidential campaign, Todd Aiken, a former representative of Missouri, was quoted saying that women whose bodies are involved in the case of legitimate rape will have ways to try to shut down the whole thing. Although he did not stand to clarify his statement as controversy began to skyrocket, it was obvious that his intended statement was that not all cases of rape are legitimate, especially if a woman's body is capable of being impregnated as a result. What is the solution? Make abortion legal to all, not just legal, but available, affordable, safe, and free from moral infringement. If abortion is legal on the federal level, however, as evidence shows, each state goes out of its way to make it increasingly difficult due to financial burdens and time restraints to impose ways in which women cannot obtain an abortion, we will have similar consequences as those of outlawing it altogether. Moral imposements should not be allowed from states onto individuals, and it is up to the federal government to enforce the federal laws, as we see no loopholes. Will the solution work? Given the substantial amount of evidence to show that the rate of use of contraceptives, the rate of abortion, and high correlation of maltreatment, death, and other negative consequences of children, it shows that this is the only possible solution.
Time. I now stand open for cross-examination.
I now stand open to cross-examination.
Points of clarification.
Points of clarification.
Thank you. Chair will now recognize the leader of the opposition for cross-examination not to exceed 3 minutes in length. Please stand so the camera can see both of you. You're a bit taller, so give me a moment to adjust. Good. Thank you. Okay.
Now, we do get some truly troubling statistics out of you regarding rape and how there's 200,000 rapes of inmates, how we see 80% of rapes are unreported. Right?
Looking at the audience,
now,
not your opponent.
My question is, what does this have to do with the issue of abortion and not just with rape as a whole? Yes, we agree rape is an issue, but the topic you're here talking about is about abortion and whether or not that should be a right afforded to the people.
Well, the problem is that you can't disassemble abortion and rape. Many cases of abortion are really a result of rape, and unless you can sit here and tell me that 100% of all rapes will be stopped and there will be no woman who has been raped and as a result become pregnant, you cannot tell me that they're not in some way intertwined. So.
Oh, well, I believe they're not intertwined, although they may overlap to some degree. And actually, now that we talk about it, let's actually go to some statistics. Now, the Guttmacher Institute in 2014, so basically what they mostly look at is basically sexual health issues. And they found that there, in 2011 alone, there were 1.06 million abortions in the United States. And additionally, 4 out of 10 unplanned pregnancies are terminated. Now, are you telling me that all of the, are you telling me that these are either all rapes, or as you stated, only rich people? Because in your case, you stated that the poor cannot get these abortions because of the high financial restraints on them.
The issue is not that these are all rapes. Let's say even 5%, 10%, 20% of them are rapes. How are you going to determine which women have been raped and should be allowed to have an abortion and which do not? Some may not want to come forward. Some may not have the evidence that can substantiate the rape. What do you do when a woman, all of the evidence that she has is gone or somehow abolished? How are you going to provide her an abortion without providing her a means to prove that she's been raped? What about those women? How are you going to account for who has a qualifying reason for it and who doesn't? What about a child who's been raped by her father?
Well, our issue is to decide that it is not qualitatively right. And in extreme circumstances, as with the law, there are always circumstances. But in the current system, which is the pro-choice system, we've seen that Roe versus Wade has not made this an issue about women's rights. It's something I will talk about. But don't you agree that what Roe versus Wade does is make this an issue of doctors' right to practice, and it does not actually progress the freedom of a woman to choose in any way?
I think that they're very, very correlated, because a doctor's right to practice is the reason that that a woman will have an abortion. If there are no doctors who have rights to practice, women cannot have abortions, whether it is an unplanned pregnancy in a 16-year-old who doesn't know better, or a woman who's been raped. How are you going to make these two separate cases when there's no way to know how she got pregnant, and there's no way to know what she's going to do about it without proving it in court?
But if there's no way to know, and there's no way to do this, and there's really no accountability in your entire system, the entire thing falls apart. When you're trying to look at some people, we need to save them, but then everyone can use the same burden. You're saying that there's no accountability for this, and that just makes the entire thing really fall apart, doesn't it? I
think that there's more unaccountability if you say that all abortions will be illegal, and all the women who may have drug abuse problems, who may have illnesses, who may be below the poverty line and not be able to pay for the child, who have been raped as a case of incest or other forms of sexual aggression. How are those women going to be provided an abortion? What part of my plan is unaccountable for if you're telling me that you're going to outlaw abortion and not provide any of these women a means of an escape from something that will very well harm them, the child, and society as a whole?
Well, I'm sorry.
That's time. Thank you. Chair will now recognize the leader of the opposition for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length. Could you center yourself a little bit more? Yeah, right. Yeah, right there. Yeah, right in between. Perfect. Yeah, good. Good.
Ready?
Yep.
Now, the government believes in pro-choice, but you don't really understand what you're choosing. You can't possibly know. You can't imagine the deep spiritual pain of abortion. Spiritually, I was dying inside. It was a tragic cancer of the soul. I could never look in the mirror again and see anything but ugliness. These are true quotes from women that are a part of the Silent No More awareness campaign. Now, what I am going to show you on the opposition side is that the reason we must ban abortion, why we must outlaw Roe v. at least why we must get rid of Roe v. Wade, is because abortion, first of all, is the taking of a life. Second of all, is not legally justified. And third of all, and most importantly, is because it puts an unfair mental and physical burden on the women in our society. And it makes it far worse than the situation that the government is trying to tell you. Now, when we first move on, we see resolutional analysis, and we agree with most of what the government said. Now, as where they believe that this is a debate on the preponderance of evidence, we disagree with the criterion. We believe what we must look at is utilitarian perspective. You must see what is going to do the most good for the people of this country, because evidence means nothing unless it is applied to the actual people. So we must see which side of this debate is going to actually help better the lives of the women, the children, and society as a whole, since this is what it's about. And now I want to look at basically what is the real problem. And now what we see is that abortion is ultimately taking the life. And we will go on to what really does it mean to define life, something that the government will have to go against. And additionally, we see that Roe v. Wade allowed for the termination of a pregnancy throughout the duration of it, all the way up until birth. And the reason why is because Roe v. Wade had nothing to do with a woman's choice. What it has to do is with a doctor's right to practice. Now, when we actually look at Roe v. Wade, what we saw they decided upon was they decided that women have the right to abortion due to right to privacy in the 14th Amendment, something that was never actually stated. And we see that the solution overall is going to be to repeal Roe v. Wade. And the reason why is because it is going to basically take the burden off of the woman in our society. It's going to restore some semblance of legal justice. And more importantly, it's going to stop the systematic killing of millions of people every year. Now we have to look at the three major points that we are going to talk about in this case. Now the first point is going to be that we are stopping the systematic murdering of millions of people every year. And that is going to be why is a fetus considered a life. The second point we are going to talk about is going to be why Roe v. Wade is legally unjustified and why getting rid of it will help restore legal justice and help to further the cause for women's rights. And third, why it's going to relieve the unfair burden that has been placed on women in our society with abortion. Now the first is that we stop the systematic slaughter of these children, basically. And now this is basically a huge issue of what does it mean to be alive? When does something become alive? And now in the scientific community, which I'm a science major, we actually have this debate a lot. What does it mean? Except we never talk about a fetus. What we talk about is things like viruses. Because anything that has multi-celled organisms, anything that can concertedly develop into a human being is very much alive. Now, some people may make the argument that no, these fetuses are just parasites that can't live alone. Yeah, we look at many parasites we see today as being very much alive. Tapeworms, malaria parasites, all of these things are very much alive, yet we still, yet they cannot live alone. Additionally, Maureen L. Condich of the Westchester Institute of Ethics, who's also a professor of neurobiology and anatomy, stated that the beginning of life occurs sometimes after fertilization of an ovum by a sperm cell. Now, fertilization is a bit tricky to define. Whether it occurs right after the copulation or whether it occurs up to 72 hours can be testified. But what we see is that fertilization occurs very much before the possible 3 trimesters that you're allowed to get an abortion under Roe v. Wade. And we see that ultimately these fetuses are very much alive. Now, some people may say that, well, no, what really makes it human isn't the ability to live on its own, but some of the features. And to this, we want to show that at 5 weeks, a baby heart starts to beat. At 6 weeks, his or her nose, mouth, and ears will develop. And at 9 weeks, he or she will have all the features of a human. Now, if you don't believe that, you might say, well, if it's not self-aware that it's a person, then it really doesn't count as a life. And now to that, we want to say that Psychology Today published in November of 2012 that actually self-awareness doesn't occur until 18 months, or on average, around 1 to 3 years of living.
2.
Which means that if you're saying that it's because they're not self-aware, then you could just kill a 1-year-old because they probably don't know that they exist either. Now, what we believe this shows is that ultimately they are alive in the end. And that by causing an abortion of this fetus after any point of 72 hours, you are killing a life. Now we move on to our second point, which is going to be legal justice, and why Roe v. Wade is just a terrible legal decision. Now, Jack Balkin of the NYU Law School wrote in his book, What Roe v. Wade Should Have Said, which was a scathing review of the decision, that not only that he said that the right to privacy is, first of all, not found anywhere in the 14th Amendment, but also the trimester framework puts all work on legislature, which is filled with gridlock, and nothing at all on the judges who are going to decide these decisions. The only thing the 14th Amendment actually says is that the state cannot deprive them of life, liberty, or property without due process. Nowhere does it say privacy.
1.
Additionally to this, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg stated that that this decision seemed to stop the momentum of the side on the side of change because it does not favor women's right to choose; it favors the doctor's right to practice. The reason why we've not seen women being helped by this decision is because the decision does not help women. By stopping this, we will relieve the unfair burden, which is our third and most important choice. If a couple chooses or accidentally has unprotected sex, the burden does not go on the man to have this abortion. The burden goes solely on the woman. The woman is the person that must decide to deal with the moral and mental and physical implications of this decision. These are the quotes we gave you before from the Silent No More Awareness campaign. They aim to educate the public that abortion is harmful emotionally, physically, and spiritually to women. We see more quotes like, I went through years of depression, lost relationships, divorce, and heartbreak thinking about the baby I would never see. Abortion is much, much more than just taking a pill or getting a procedure. It is a mental and physical toll on the society, and especially on the women. We believe that this unfair toll is something that you cannot allow to proceed, and that is why we strongly believe that you must value pro-life over pro-choice. I now stand open for cross-examination and points of clarification.
Thank you. Chair will now hear a cross-examination from the Leader of the Government. Stand close together, please. Thank you.
So the debate today that we have is whether or not that women should have the freedom of choice in abortion.
Right.
And if you oppose this, can you explain what you plan on do with the victims that I mentioned earlier, those of cases of rape, poverty, mental illness, physical abuse, drug abuse?
Great. I actually want to talk about this. Now, although we believe that some cases of rape are extenuating, and there are cases, of course, where our mother's life is in danger that are extenuating, and in which cases can be decided in the courts that they always have been. But when we talk about issues like mental health and drug abuse, and poverty, I do not believe this excuses someone from having a child. If you become pregnant, just because you are a drug addict does not excuse you from that decision. It does not take away the burden of your actions. And we believe that, to some extent, there is some responsibility that applies there. We do not believe those are extenuating circumstances for pregnancies. We believe that those which are prior acknowledged, those that are dealt with by the courts, for example, where the woman's life is in severe danger for severe cases of rape, these are extenuating circumstances.
I'd like to clarify that when you discuss mental diseases
Yes.
and drug abuse problems, these are all issues that, once they've taken over your mind, you're almost very certainly incapable of making decisions that can help sustain the life of a child. So for you to say that someone who's under the influence of drugs or has a mental issue should be taking responsibility for this child, they may want to be incapable of. Also, I'd like to state
actually, before you move on, I'd like to restate that question in a different format. Basically, what you're saying is that we should kill the child in order to better itself, because its life is going to be bad anyway.
I will discuss that in my next question. I'd
Great.
also like for you to discuss court systems. You just stated that you'd like to take those extenuating, I don't know what extenuating is to you, but extenuating circumstances of rape to court. Are you aware that after the third, I think it's, 12 weeks in, which is the third month, you are basically not capable of having an abortion because you have a child inside of you that has been formed. There is no such thing as an abortion. Do you think it's possible that within the first 3 months, the court system will be able to prove that a rape has taken place so that the woman can still have an abortion?
Well, actually, that's very much false. Actually, with Roe v. Wade, abortions were legal up until third trimesters. In almost every state, you can have an abortion up to 9 weeks simply by taking a pill, and you can have surgical abortions up to the 20th week, actually. And for mostly cases of rape, the DNA evidence that is required will be able to be decided on within a matter of weeks. So I do not believe that that is going to be an issue in any circumstance. The courts will be able to deal with it in a timely fashion, that the woman can get the justice she does deserve.
You stated in your argument that you said that the systematic slaughter of children is terrible, and you went on to discuss how a fetus is a child.
Yes.
I caught a quote that you said that a child can develop into a human being. Those were your specific words. As you were talking about the fetus, you first claimed that it was a human being, and then as you were going on, you quoted saying, can develop into a human being, which means you clarified for yourself that it is actually not yet a human being. Is that correct?
I'm sorry if I used the wrong words there, but what I stated is it has all the characteristics that very much make it a human being, and it is as much of a human being as an infant is.
30 seconds.
With every quality. But now what you have not seen, what we actually see just from the essence of this debate, is that by allowing us to be called the pro-life movement, what you are giving us is the fact that we are defending life as a whole, that is in fact a life we're defending. And I've shown you a bunch of different qualities as to how it is considered a life, whether it's self-awareness, whether it's features, whether it's just the parasitism. There's no actual claim to say it is not a life.
Except for the fact that when you compare an infant or an adolescent who's being abused at home, who sleeps hungry, who sleeps on the street, as compared to a fetus who will not grow to become a human being and have these emotions, and you have to make that choice, most people who have a logical, sound idea of life understand that those people would be much more in pain and suffering than would a fetus.
That's time. Answer the question briefly.
Yes. Now, my result to that is I do not believe killing someone who's going to be in pain is the solution. We don't agree with assisted suicide in any sense, and just because their life may be filled with suffering does not mean we should just kill them right off the bat.
Thank you so much. It's now time for refutation, those famous 4 steps of refutation. First from the affirmative, who will give us 4 steps of refutation as to why pro-choice is more important than pro-life.
They say that the abortion should not be a matter of free choice, and on the basis that abortion will be the systematic slaughtering and killing of a human being. We disagree because throughout the period of U.S. history in which abortions became legal, over 53 million legal abortions have been performed in the United States, according to Gutch Massacre in 2009. What would we have done with the 43 million children who would have been born to very, quite possibly, inadequate lives? The measures taken to prevent women from gaining access to abortion clinics have hit hardest women and families who cannot afford access to alternative care. If all the physicians in clinics who performed legal abortions are wiped out, driven out, and the state has made the choice for her. These measures that have been taken to place an undue burden on women do not actually provide her any less of a burden than they would if she was provided a choice that is convenient, that is safe, that is affordable, that she can make a choice based off logical and sound reasoning than it would if she had absolutely no choice.
Therefore what?
Oh, I wasn't done.
Oh, sorry.
My article stated that the increased maltreatment and abuse in children may result in
3 left.
3
minutes left.
In childhood mortality, in addition to long-term effects on mental health, substance use, risky sexual behavior, and criminal behavior. Child maltreatment is also associated with increased risks of unemployment, poverty, use of Medicaid into adulthood, suggesting that economic disadvantages associated with social maltreatment may persist along generations. This has been very strongly correlated to those who have been born into families in which the mother or the family themselves are below the poverty line, unemployed, or incapable of providing an adequate lifestyle for the child due to various reasons. Misinformation, a lack of empathy and understanding, and an overarching religious view that dominates beliefs and social issues about abortion are all factors that play into the reason that this problem is plaguing our society. States need to come together to recognize this. Therefore, states need to come together to recognize this constitutional right, to recognize the social, economic, and moral consequences of not providing this very fundamental right to a woman about her own body. Planned Parenthood should continue to receive the government funding and be subsidized. Women should be in control of their own reproductive health, and the government and society as a whole should work together to provide the best possible atmosphere for women who do choose to bring a child into this world. The most dominant issue that is currently standing in the way of legal, safe, and available abortions are those of morality. And given the consequences of outlawing it, from the data that I've shown, the morality would come into question either way, because if we are going to force the birth of a child into a world in which it is likely to be abused, killed, or suffered from physical and psychological damage, isn't our morality into play just as evenly, if not more so?
One left.
Oh, therefore, we should be creating a society in which only mothers and parents who feel fit to bring a child into the world do so, and that the child is created if the child is created on the basis of rape, suffering, mental illness, drug abuse, all of those will have a choice not to be born if the mother or the parent together feel inadequate of bringing that child into the world.
Thank you. Okay, Chair recognizes the Leader of the Opposition for a speech not to exceed 4 minutes in length, incorporating the 4 steps of refutation, maybe even answering 3 big questions, who knows.
Now, First of all, if you come from parents that are below the poverty line, I want to say sorry to you first of all, because according to the government, you're not going to really have a job after this, and you're not really going to have much prospects. Because they stated that if you come from a family below the poverty line and you were unplanned, if you were an unplanned pregnancy, then your life is going to be terrible. Then you simply are going to face so much suffering that you should have just been killed. Now, we disagree with that. Now, we've already shown you that half of the pregnancies in the United States are unplanned already. We do not believe that just because a pregnancy is unplanned, that it means you're going to be unfit to take care of it. Now, they even say that only if a mother and the father decide they are fit to do so, should they be able to take a child into this world. And we could see some logic there, and we would agree with them if they were saying that all unplanned pregnancies should be aborted. But they're not. They're saying that you should choose. So their problems are very much non-exclusive. Because what you see is that there are very much going to be people that are going to be brought into this world where their mothers and fathers may not be fit, or it may be a single mother, where they may be below the poverty line, or that is the decision they make. Because as much as they may want to talk about morality and how it's immoral to bring someone into a bad situation, people have their very own sense of morality, and that is what has made this country what it is. That is what has allowed us to make the decisions we have. And if someone decides that they want to bring a child into this life and not to murder the child, then that is their decision. They have not shown you why a fetus is not a life. And we agree that that stands. And that means that you are killing a life. And if someone believes they do not want to make that decision, they have the very much right to do that, despite the situation they're in. Now, they say that if you were a drug addict, or if you are... if you're below the poverty line, then you should be able to choose to do it. But we believe these are not extenuating circumstances for the situation. Additionally, one of their major points of refutation was that we've had 53 million abortions, and that what would we have done with those children? Well, we believe that this is simply a bit false, because just because you had 53 million abortions does not believe there would be 53 million more children, or that these are just simply a false leap. There's no link between those two statements. And additionally, what the data she's brought to you actually shows is that abortions have become a very large issue. If there have been 53 million abortions in the past 30 years that it's been allowed, that obviously we need to do something to change, because we have not been instilling the right ideas. Now, additionally, we want to go into some of the points they've brought up. Now, they stated that basically in their case, the main contention was that rape is a big issue. 200,000 inmates a year raped. 80% of rapes are unreported. And we believe this is a very big issue. In fact, this is probably a bigger issue than the issue of abortion. But we believe that these are inextricably linked, because they simply are not. Although there are certain cases where there are rapes and the child should be aborted for the benefit of the mother, in which we can see that being done in a legal court, we do not believe that this allows all women to have the choice to have an abortion, because simply the ideas are unrelated. Now, what we've seen overall, when we weigh this case, now they've brought you two major ideas. One, that rape is rampant, and we should be giving every woman the right just in case they don't want to report the rape. And the second is that people who are below the poverty line, who are drug addicts, they're not going to be able to take care of the kid, so let's just let them kill it, because the life is going to be bad anyway. Now, we don't agree with this. What we believe are the stronger, more salient points in the round is what we have brought to you on the opposition side. We've brought to you 3 points. The first of which being that the fetus is very much alive, and we've shown to you in many metrics why it is very much alive and just as alive as an infant. The second one we have shown you is why the decision of Roe v. Wade, first of all, does not benefit the rights of the women, and why, more importantly, it's not constitutionally justified. And the most important point is that this is putting an unfair burden on the women, because if a couple decides to make a mistake, the man doesn't have to take responsibility, but a woman has to deal with a lifetime of sorrow, as we've shown to you through the Silent No More Awareness campaign, where this is not a decision that is short-lived. This is a decision that may stick with you for life, and we are not willing to have this continue on through our nation. And that's why we strongly urge the opposition ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's now time for the audience to make a very hard decision. Cross the house, shake hands, fill out. You have to choose one. Yes, you do. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Chopstick, I need one too. I think I have one. Yeah. She has a decision.
Hold on, it's like on Monday.
I don't have to write one, right?
What?
Do I have to write one?
No. But how would you vote? Are you done? Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Should I get one from you, Rosie? Yeah. Okay. Rosie the Riveter. You ever heard of her?
Yeah.
You never heard that before, have you? Well, she was very famous during World War II.
She was a real person.
Yeah.
She was.
Well, they based it on
Oh.
a factory worker.
Yeah.
Her name was Liz, but you know, they just kind of made her the all encompassing.
Right, but in that case, it was.
Yes.
Cool.
Ruby says that reason
Thank you. Thank you. On a 4-3 decision on the question of whether pro-choice is more important than pro-life, the decision goes to the pro-choice side of the government. Let's begin here on this side. Yes, sir.
I am Shevin.
Hi, Shevin.
I voted for Austin. Yeah, to start with Saya first. I think for me the main issue that I couldn't get your argument was that there was the overemphasis on rape. This whole point on rape being like a main argument for pro-choice being more important than pro-life was, I feel, a bit too minute. Like it's an important issue, and yes, but it's not just about rape. There are other issues that we have to consider, and it's a pity that those points only came out towards the rebuttals and not in the main arguments. Yeah, that's for it. And I voted for Austin because I thought you started really well with a strong story. It was really creative the way you started. Very strong arguments, very coherent all the way in your rebuttals and your cross references, which was great. Very consistent in the reasons and stuff. But I felt there was a bit too much detail at the start. Like there was a lot of explanation about like life, about baby, about fetus, and very little arguments. I thought the quality arguments only came out at the later part of the debate, which was the really important parts that I wanted to hear. So yeah, that was for me.
Good. Those were thoughtful comments. I think that when we have a factual dispute, let me just take an aside here because we're going to quickly run out of time. We're at 10 of now, so we're going to make our things brief. I fault Austin for this because there's a lot of research and evidence out there saying that the rape issue is a red herring, that in fact less than 0.5% of abortions happen because of rape, and it's an insignificant issue. But he didn't state that or have any of those facts, so he didn't have any refutation of that. Yes, sir, please, very quickly.
Hi, I'm Justin.
Hi, Justin.
I voted in favor of the opposition for pro-life. I thought that he did a good job of reframing the debate.
Opposition of pro-life, yes. Yeah.
Okay. He did a good job of reframing it in terms of it being like utilitarian and doctors' rights and Roe v. Wade. He did really well during the refutation. But I think he failed to address what about the women's lives who were improved by abortion. And for Saya, I felt that she had really good evidence and examples, but didn't emphasize which ones were more important. So it was hard to tell.
Right. That was sort of one of my sadnesses. Both sides didn't really want to debate the topic. They wanted to, which is more important, the right of the woman to have the choice or the right of the fetus, you know.
Hi, I'm Tiffany.
Hi, Tiffany.
I voted for the affirmative because I just wasn't convinced by the opposition's most important point that taking away the woman's right to choose to have an abortion or not would lift a burden from her. I don't think that there's really a way of proving it, and if there's like no concrete evidence for that, then it's like a really strong point to make for like the whole population of women in general.
Right. There's no question there's, whether we like it or not, women are sort of locked into biological bondage because of the nature of child rearing, right? 18 years of it. Yes, please.
My name's Tam.
Hi, Tam.
I voted for the negative for Austin because I think, like, it was really close, but I think, like, in the end, what won me is, like, just the structure of the introduction, how Saya didn't, like, get to all of her points. I felt like that was really important to, like, explain the advantages to the proposal. I think that's what Austin did.
Okay. Yes, please.
Hello, I'm Dora.
Hi, Dora.
I voted for Saya. I felt like both arguments were a little irrelevant to the motion a lot of the time, and they kind of kept jumping around. But I based mine off of the introductions of both, where I really liked that Saya, hers was a statistic that 3 out of 10 women get abortions, so it was very universal and it was logical. And then Austin's was the stories, which were more emotional and kind of specific examples.
Right, rather than larger case stories. In right here, please.
I'm very biased on this, so I felt like I shouldn't have been qualified to vote on it. But just by
We're all biased. Say your name first.
Annette.
Hi, Annette. Austin, can you move your head? Can you move your head, please? Thank you.
I ended up voting for Saya because I thought that she showed the necessity in abortion. And, you know, I can't really deny if someone gets raped and, you know, abort a baby. But if I knew that that statistic, that a very small percentage of people that get abortions actually were raped, then I probably would have changed my mind. I thought Austin,
Yeah, it's a thing of convenience. Pop a Valium and go get Valium. It's used as a form of birth control, frankly.
Yeah, that's what, and then I thought Austin did a very good job proving his points. That probably would have made it stronger and might have swayed me. But then this is when my own bias comes in, when I hear the 53 million abortions or all that, I'm just thinking, oh my God, overpopulation crisis, you know, abort all the babies is fine.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Just, boy. Yeah. Yes, please.
Rosie.
Hi, Rosie.
Well, I voted for the affirmative for Saya because Austin started on the point of utilitarian, and that is the greatest good for all. And so when Saya made her point about the 43 million abortions and the 42 million additional people that would be in the world, or in the United States at least, I figured that that would be not for the greatest good of the whole society, of the greater good of everyone. Also, the mothers with unwanted children, that's not the greater good for them. All the children suffering and having trauma and being injured by the parents, that's not the greater good for them. So his starting point of utilitarian point of view threw me off to start to decide on her.
Roger makes a very important point. Let me just close this with that. They both didn't use the criterion. They both advocated very much to their advantage in a very useful way. Cross-sex was minimally effective. In particular, Saya, you really need to review the 4 steps of refutation on a mini level. He said, I disagree because therefore on each of his specific points, he had 3 major arguments that I was looking for you to refute. See? Whereas when you watch yourself tonight on YouTube, you're going to see that you just sort of talked from your brief and didn't do any refutation of what Austin really had to say. You just repeated what you said. Austin, I'd really like to see you redo this and really crystallize this and more in terms of why, the issue we're asking about is pro-choice versus pro-life, and why one is more important than the other. Why is it that women claim a privileged status, that their choice is more important than a life? And that's what we're trying to get at with this question, which we didn't get at with this debate. Why is a woman's choice more important than a life? Especially your evidence of, it goes down and down further and further with a heartbeat at 5 weeks. And, it's getting very dicey. But anyway, thank you all for staying and after for